All right. So paid ads is the best and safest way to grow your sales on Amazon, but it can be time consuming. There's a lot of stuff to think about. We think it's like, oh yeah, I just, you throw up a couple campaigns and some keywords and everything's going to be great. But then you realize there's a lot of stuff you got to do to stay on top of this. So to help figure all this out and sort it out, I'm super excited to have on Elizabeth Greene from Jungler. So Elizabeth, thank you for joining us in the Maximizing E-commerce podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this too. We were just chatting before we hit the record button. I was like, "Oh, we're gonna have something like really good that like we should have recorded." So I was like, well, "Let's make sure to get right into this." So you have been doing PPC for a while. We'll get into your background, and you've kind of become known for bulk sheets, I would say. And bulk sheets is, for those who are listening to this, it's kind of hard if you're listening to the audio format to really grasp how helpful they are. But the thing of it is I discovered them about 2.5 years ago. I think I always knew they were there in Campaign Manager, but I didn't actually start using them until about 2.5 years ago, like late 2019. And this is not hyperbole, life-saving, life-changing once I started using them, how much time it saved and how my results got so much better. And so I'm excited to dive into it because there is an important note. It's they're about to totally change. If you've been doing it one way, you're going to be forced into a new way here in a little bit. As we record this, and probably when this comes out, the change will have already been kind of forced on us. So before we get into all that, Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the business.
Yeah. So I'll try and give the condensed version. I like to say I fell into it and then I fell in love with it.
Nice.
So I've definitely become the bulk file. I feel like I put out enough content and education on bulk files. I've kind of been like the go-to person for that, which has been cool because I love it. I love sharing about things that I love. But yeah, I did not start out as a spreadsheet. Bulk files are spreadsheets. Like, this is what they are. It's in a spreadsheet. So you have to know spreadsheets. So I did kind of fall into that very much. Yes. Sorry. That was my 3-year-old. He popped his head in.
Okay. No. That's okay. It's like that news clip from a couple of years ago where like someone's very serious about like geopolitics and then like the 2-year-old comes in.
The kid's running in. It's hysterical. I know there was speculation. Is it a nanny? Is it the mom? And like, nope, that wasn't a nanny. Mom's the one. That was mom panic. That was definitely mom.
Yeah. Definitely know what you mean. So, all right, cool. So anyway, you kind of fell in love with it. You started kind of teaching people on bulk files because you found it was helpful. So how long have you been in this business?
Officially the agency is going on a little over 3 years now. So a little bit longer than that as far as like freelancer, just working in Amazon PPC. So me and my husband, technically a co-founder, because he definitely is like the business brain and the push behind everything I do, although he's very much in the background. Turns out I love spreadsheets and I can sit in front of a computer and happy as a clam to play with things for hours, and that drives him absolutely up a wall. But he has much more business instincts than I do, so he kind of heads that side and helps support me there. But yeah, so we originally had started selling some. I always say we got it into it how you should never get into the business, as in, oh yeah, let's test this a little bit. Like, definitely Amazon, it is a full-fledged business. So if you're going to get into it, you should treat it as such and treat it seriously. So we did not track our numbers. I'm not 100% sure. The numbers were never very big to begin with. We might have lost a little bit. We might have broken even, which would have been good. I'm not even 100% sure. And I don't even think I could calculate it at this point. But that did bring us into the world of Amazon. And then we ended up transitioning towards focusing more on helping sellers with ads, and mostly because there was just a lot of people asking, like, hey, how do you do this? As we were up and coming, like this was before the automatic campaigns even got split out the 4 targeting types. So, I mean, how many millions of updates have there been since then? that was back when people saying, oh, do I need to do this PPC thing? I've heard a little bit about it. I probably should figure it out. Nowadays, everyone's like, all right, I know I need to run this. I need to figure it out. Back then it was still kind of like, do I need help? So there's a lot of people just asking questions like, do I need to use this? How do we even do this? What is this? It's still very much the old school. You get autos, you migrate them to manuals, and you call that good. So just kind of helping people sort of navigating that world, and then it's just grown from there.
Okay, gotcha. So you started out as a seller, just maybe
seller.
You had stuff, you had widgets for sale on Amazon. But you were seeing you got to do PPC, even back when PPC was still fairly early. And I got into Amazon private label in early 2016. I dabbled in retail arbitrage and very quickly realized I didn't like that. Nothing wrong with retail arbitrage. It's just a lot of scanning and looking around for stuff.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
Oh, totally is. Totally is.
Keep up with it. Like if you stop, it stops.
Exactly. Private label, at least you have kind of your ongoing brand, but with that, you got to advertise it. And so, and to your point, it's becoming more pay to play. So if someone's listening to this, like, oh, I don't really advertise, like, well, you're really missing the boat, because unlike, let's say, Google or Facebook, where your paid ad results probably won't have much, if any, effect on your organic results, on Amazon, it can have an effect. And there's more and more placements for ads that would have been organic. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's two very unique things about the Amazon ad platform. One of them, like you said, you can influence your organic ranking through ads, which cannot be done anywhere else unless there's some other ad platform I'm not aware of. And then the second thing is also that you can absolutely attribute sales to your ads. So sales attribution, especially like in Facebook or Google ads or other ad platforms, it's definitely something that people are working on, but getting like absolute attributions is relatively unheard of in the ad space. And the fact that you can do that, so you can actually calculate things accurately, like ACoS. It's why there's ACoS metrics inside of Amazon and nowhere else, is because you can accurately calculate, revenue attributions to ads.
I never thought about it from that angle, but that's such a good point, that even with like Instagram Shop or like some of these other things where like you're buying on the platform, it's still not as cohesive, especially like if you're sending traffic to a Shopify store, because it has to send data back to Google or whatever. And, with the iOS 14 updates, which some people may know about, basically not all that information communicates back to the ad platform like Facebook or Google. And even before that, it was never quite perfect, and there was a lot that could go wrong. Whereas with Amazon, it's all on their platform. So they know what's happening. They know where the person's scrolling and where their probably eyes are looking, which is probably kind of creepy.
Yeah.
So interesting. So that is such a good point, that you get much better data on Amazon. And so you might as well take advantage of this data. Now, the problem is, I wouldn't say this is a problem. It's kind of like the paradox of choice, or whatever the word might be, that you just have so many pieces of data to look at. Now, one of the things I like about bulk sheets is I think it has most of what you really need right there. And the nice thing is, as we were talking about before we hit the record button, it's free, because there's a lot of platform or software tools. They might do a really good job, but they're going to be relatively expensive, and you can kind of come up with your own system a lot with bulk sheets, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be tied into a specific strategy. So I know we're kind of preaching to the choir with each other, but for those listening, why would you say someone might want to consider bulk sheets?
Yeah, I would say for that reason, I mean, one, I still think they're great, even if you don't use them to update things for analysis. I think the singular drawback And I think honestly, the only drawback I can think of to bulk files, other than the fact that they're manual, and if you hate spreadsheets, you're going to hate bulk files. Like they're spreadsheets. But if you're in advertising at all, you should get used to spreadsheets because there's a lot of information that you need and it's in a spreadsheet. But I would say the only real drawback is the fact that you have to download a singular date range. So like with any file or with any report you request, like you're looking at a specific static date range. So I do think there's still validity, even in looking in the ad console, which we still do, even though we have like robust systems. We even use external tools, or we use bulk files or systems we developed. Like we're still in the ad console because I don't think you can get that granular as far as comparing different date ranges. Some tools are very helpful to pull that out. There is no tool on the market that can pull lifetime data, and you can get lifetime in Ad Manager. But I would say that's really honestly, other than the fact, again, you're kind of working in a spreadsheet. That would honestly be the only drawback, because I agree with you. The amount of data needed to really analyze the account. And if you know what you're doing in spreadsheets, like you can pull out things like, where am I advertising this SKU on this particular product? What campaigns am I advertising this particular product in? Kind of like, what's my spread and groupings? There's a lot of really interesting and cool things you can pull out of a bulk file because all of the data is there.
Yes. And that's so true. And now the thing that's kind of, I think, scares a lot of people is that, who don't use bulk sheets, is that, whether you're using Campaign Manager, it's at least a relatively nice looking interface. If you, most of the software tools, it's at least fairly user friendly. They put, a lot of effort into UX designs. Bulk sheets, it's basically like just a big CSV file. It's not a CSV file, but you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it's just not pretty spreadsheet. So for spreadsheet nerds like us, it's good. But for those who are intimidated by spreadsheets, what are some things you might suggest they could do to get over some of that spreadsheet fear?
I would say one, recognize that you downloading it and poking around on it isn't going to do anything to your account. Until you upload that file, you're not going to make any changes. So if you just want to download it, open it, and go, okay, let me figure out how to find a cost today, you can do that. And I don't think there's any shame in easing into it. And the other thing is that no changes take place unless you initiate those changes. Now more so than ever, because we have with the update of the operations column. So unless you specify a change in that operations column, you're not going to accidentally click a button and have something change in the account. If you're using the legacy format, maybe make sure you didn't actually accidentally change a number. But if you're using the new update format, so if you want to go in and change one bid just to see what happens, you can do that. And the potential negatives people worry about, I think, are the same potential negatives that people worry about when they're making changes in ad console. Like, am I making the right decision? And if you know how to read data, or at least you know what you're looking at, like if you are making bid changes inside the ad console and you're like, okay, if anything is over 40% ACoS, and it's not making me many sales, my typical rule of thumb is to drop the bid by like 20%. I'm not saying that's actually even a rule we use. I'm just like giving an example. That's a potential rule you're using. I don't think we use anything really close to that, but like if that's what you typically do and you say, okay, I normally look at the last 14 days and I look at these numbers and I make these changes, you will be able to much more quickly determine where that's located in your account and make those changes. And again, you're the one putting the inputs, you're the one specifying what you need to be changed. And if you want to only change one or two things, like that's an option just to kind of see how the account reacts to that. You can ease into it. It doesn't have to be, all right, I'm managing my whole account through bulk files now. Like you could just be like, all right, today I'm going to do bid changes through bulk files and maybe tomorrow I'm doing through the ad console, and like, that's fine.
Yeah. And to your point, you could do either or. And like you said, it's, you can change all the numbers you want in the spreadsheet, but if you don't upload it back in, it's not going to make a difference. So you can practice, so to speak, without actually doing anything that's going to change your account. And I think like with a lot of things, at least if you uploaded it into your account, you can always change it later. Nothing is set in stone. It's not like you're going to change a bid and then it's now locked in forever. So if you put in a $10 bid,
that's a great tactic to use. So the one benefit of bulk files, and actually something we were discussing before we hit record, is the fact that you can keep a record of your old spreadsheets. Because it's a spreadsheet, you have to save it at some level somewhere to be able to upload it. So what we will do is we'll keep the original, and we might just make a copy of that, or we might just pull out the things we want to change and put them somewhere else. But if you keep that original copy, if you upload that spreadsheet and specify, again, it's going to get a little bit, I wouldn't say trickier now. There's one more thing to keep in mind now with the operations column if you're using the new format. So you want to be aware of that. But other than that, like you can upload that file and simply revert everything to whatever is contained in the file, or whatever was contained in your account before you made the changes. So if you make a whole bunch of changes and you're like, oh my goodness, all of a sudden something went crazy, I don't even know what it is, and you can go back and revert that very easily with bulk files. And that's actually one thing we do. So client accounts that we onboard, if they're disconnecting a software, we'll say, hey, let us know prior to disconnecting the software. Not all softwares, there are certain softwares that once you disconnect them, like they'll revert things or pause things. Like we've seen it happen where like there's one software out there, and I really hope they've changed it. What will happen is once you disconnect the software, it'll actually revert all of the bids that they've been managing to whatever they were prior to coming onto the software. So like all of that change that's happened I'm not saying everybody does it, I'm saying it happens. So what we'll do, just to like kind of hedge against that, if and when it ever happens, we'll just download a bulk file and we'll say, hey, let us know prior to doing the software. We'll download it so we have a record of what the account was. And then if anything happens, we'll simply go through and upload the file, and basically resets the account. So we kind of have that as a safety net in case anything happens.
Now, could you, and that's an excellent point. I think someone should probably do no matter what, even if they're switching softwares or whatever the case is, even if they're not using bulk sheets, they could do that. And they now have basically everything in one place to look at. Now, you can disconnect the software though on the Amazon side though, right? Can you go to Amazon? Like there's not like a user-friendly, you'd have to put in a support case unless I'm missing a screen.
I'm trying to remember. So some softwares can be disconnected like inside the software. We've seen like weird instances where like they disabled all the automations but forgot a couple like of their headline ads that were like enabled, and we're like, what the heck is going on? Like, so there are some weird things. There's definitely ways, like, because you retain user permissions of your account. So if you want to revoke access to anything, even if like your agency is like, hey, set up the software, give us MWS tokens. If you're the admin, like you can go through, and Amazon gives you that right to disconnect whatever you want from your account. So you absolutely can go through and disconnect. And that's not a process. Like we don't typically get admin access because we're not full service agency. I've actually totally, because there's so many like new things coming out that we're like, oh, we need access to this and this. So it might be worth our while. We just get access to the things we need. So as far as disconnecting, that's not really something that we deal with. I know it's absolutely something you can do inside the Seller Central though.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good point, is that you still retain access to all that. But, just in general, like if you're switching something over, bulk sheet would be a great way to kind of have a backup, because you don't know there could be 2 lines of code that it's not nefarious purposes, just, oh, sorry, it's just deleted everything. Well, I guess it didn't delete it, but it switched everything off, or changed the bids to what they were in the beginning, or 2 years ago when you started with it, or whatever the case is. You never know. And again, might not be anything nefarious, or we're going to punish people for leaving us. It's just stuff happens in the world. So it's better to have a backup plan than point fingers. So tell me a little bit about kind of what you're looking at when you're when you're going through the data? Like, how are you analyzing it? Or if somebody came to you, maybe to say another way, they're new at this, or they're trying to get a little better at it, what would you recommend to them on how they should be looking at their data?
Yeah, that's a good one. If you're just getting in data in general, or bulk files, or both,
Let's say
I
bulk
guess.
files.
Okay. The best thing I think to familiarize yourself with bulk files, and once you get it, like you get it, and you can navigate most of them, is in the tabs. So the bulk file does split out sponsored products, sponsored brands, and sponsored display ads. But they retain a column. I want to say it's column B. I think it's called record now. It was called record type in the old one. But it basically tells you what level you're looking at. And if you kind of understand how that column works and what's in that column, like you can very easily sort and filter bulk files with ease and drill down into whatever point you want. So the record type has like campaign, ad group, ad, which is like your products, keyword, and product targeting. And basically that says, okay, so if you were filtered in the column record to only show keywords, then okay, this is all the data for like every single keyword across my entire account. And then you can go through sorting. Okay, so what's my highest spend keyword maybe? I don't think there's any real way to get away from ACoS, although I think a lot of us account managers, as we start like getting deeper and deeper into it, realize like that's not the sole and only metric that you should be looking at, but at some level that does tell you how profitable that keyword is. So I don't think it's a bad idea to say, hey, my margins in the account are 30%. I know that everything above 30% is, running above my margin. So therefore maybe I should take a look at that. I find that where things get more nuanced, and this is in bulk files or any bid adjustment software you're using, is the fact that the platform in general, as far as Amazon ads, is getting more and more competitive. So what we're seeing often is people go, okay, I need to hit like a 30% ACoS. I'm at 40, so I'm going to chop anything over 30. And they come in the next day, they're like, oh, my sales went down in my account. Like, what's going on? That's such a common scenario. And the thing is that you're treating everything as an equal, where not every single keyword and target in your account is pulling its equal weight as far as like importance to driving sales for your account. So kind of the way we think about it and we split it out is like, where are my important keywords? And I need to kind of make sure I like maintain some sort of presence on those keywords. And oftentimes that's they're just tolerating a bit higher ACoS. So one thing that we do, and I actually tell every single account manager, I'm like, I don't care what the account is. I don't care what the output file looks like. Before you make any changes in a bulk file, I want you to go into like your final output file. And I want you to sort by orders and sort by sales and see what is driving the highest orders and the highest sales in my account. And then make sure that those bids, if those are important keywords to the account, those ones have not been adjusted too drastically. And actually that creates sort of like a level of manual oversight on what we do. And we find that actually works very well for an account. So we do have like more sophisticated algorithms that's kind of correct for things like that. But just having like that manual, like, hey, I'm making sure I'm not like cutting my top keywords in half. I think that's where a lot of people maybe run into issues. And so they feel like bid automations, like I've tried it and it just doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work. Like the robot's doing what you told it to do. It's just you didn't get sophisticated enough in your directions. So what we're finding is if you can start getting more sophisticated in kind of how you're treating targets, then you can say, okay, these are my low bid, like autos. These are the keywords that like, I'm not going to try and aggressively scale my category targeting because it's not really going to help me rank. It's helping me scrape stuff. Or these are my keyword research ones. I might be fine with saying, okay, everything over 30%, I need to cut. But like for my ranking keywords, that's like helping me maintain top of search. Maybe I should just be okay if ACoS is running at like 40% because I see like the results from ranking.
Gotcha. And one of the things I wish was on the bulk sheet was tacos, because everyone's talking about tacos the last couple of years, and it's such a good metric really to look at. But unfortunately, there's not a good, at least within Campaign Manager, to figure it out. You could duct tape it together using bulk sheets and business reports and then match it up by SKU.
Yeah, so you can, the issue with that, so sponsor brands throws a wrench in the works as far as calculating total ACoS numbers, because to calculate total ACoS, that's ad spend divided by ad sales. And if you can't accurately calculate ad spend, because ad spend per SKU is not attributed on any report, they like gave us a sponsor brand report that everybody freaked out about, and then realized it didn't contain ad spend, it only contained ad sales. Just like, thanks, but
right.
I could have used ad spend. That would have solved all our problems. So you can, if you exclude sponsor brands, you can include sponsor brands video though, because that drives to a singular landing page.
Right.
So technically speaking, that could be, so you're kind of weeding out the like non-attributed ad spend. And what we do is we roll it up to a parent ASIN level, which kind of gives you a little bit more visibility, because we're assuming, and it's not super accurate, but we're assuming if we're only advertising this parent ASIN, that maybe we're creating sales off of that. That being said, like if we're driving to a store page, how accurate is that? We're attributing to something that maybe isn't getting a sale. I mean, there's things like that. That makes it that weeds out a little bit more of the unattributed ad spend. Sponsored products and sponsored display ads, 100%. You can attribute total ACoS numbers. The reason why I don't think we will ever be able to calculate total ACoS numbers on a keyword level, which I would love, that would be, oh my gosh, amazing, is the fact that there's no way for us to like aggregate total sales in business reports to a specific keyword placement. Like you can get some sort of visibility if you look at the search query report, but that's aggregated on a brand level. So if you have multiple products, like how much is that driving? There's only so much you can correlate. And I think the inaccuracies of the data would just be so wide that you wouldn't actually be able to gain any insights. You absolutely can do things relatively cleanly, other than the sponsored brands attributions on a product level. So that's something we'll look at, like how profitable is this product? And then depending on like how many variations you have in the listing, sometimes it makes sense to roll that up to the listing level, because one thing is that the ads will attribute sales to whatever product was clicked on, but that doesn't necessarily mean that product they got the sale. So if you have very large variation listing, that's where you'll get something that has like an ACoS of 20%, or like, say maybe you have a total ACoS of 10%, but if you look at the total ACoS, it's 100%, because that one's getting all the clicks and like funneling the traffic, and then another one's sale. So if you're looking at in the business reports, like obviously that original click product didn't get the sale, so they're not going to say like, hey, the incorrect product got a sale, but they are attributing the sale to whatever product got the click, because it's last click attribution. So you'll get like weird things like that. And so we do have some brand owners that are like, okay, I want to like calculate profits on a product level. And so we'll start looking at a SKU and they're like, wait, like the ads look great, but like total ACoS looks like, what's going on? And so we've kind of pieced it out. So for those ones, either we might reduce what we're doing in the ads for that product and then just kind of see overall if the product maintains what we need it to, or we might just roll it up to the listing level and just kind of look at it that way.
Right. But going back to the whole thing, like there is no place where Amazon gives us tacos, period. Right.
No.
Unless you can think of
one. Something we have to calculate.
Right. Exactly. So it'd be nice to know, like, you know, if there was some report. So like, if you have that, like one of my things I tell people is there is no trophy for top of search. Like, I think some people go after top of search just thinking like they're winning. Well, it's like, but winning is money in your bank account. And so, you know, if you can see tacos, if your tacos is staying pretty good because you can see like, oh, I must be getting a lot of organic sales from being at the top of search for a main keyword. But, you know, I know there's a lot of debate on this. And so,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think the more you can drill down, we're finding value on calculating things on a product level. Because actually I audited another account recently that he was focused on profitability, and he's kind of wondering, just wanted to get a pulse on what the current agency was doing. And so I was going in there and like, oh, top line, everything looks great. Like, I mean, total ACoS numbers like lower than, honestly, I think you're leaving money on the table, but like, run your business how you will. And so I'm calculating out. And the one thing I like looking at is what I call ad sale percentage. It's basically the ratio of like how your total sales, like how much are coming from ads. So you just take your ad sales divided by total sales, and you're like, okay, so 20%, 30%, at this point, maybe more close to 50% of my total sales that are coming from ads. That just gives me a pulse on like, hey, if I make drastic changes to the ads, I'm affecting 50% of my total sales. So like maybe pump the brakes a little bit, versus if you are dealing with an account that's like 30%, well, then that's a much smaller ratio of like your total sales that you're affecting through drastic changes through ads. It just, again, it gives us a pulse on stuff. And so like total attributed sales to ads percentage was like 20% or something. So it was like, oh, okay, that number looks good. Drilling down to a product level, although, top line, everything looked there was two products that were least taking up the highest percentage of the ad spend. Those ones were 76% and 64% of the total sales attributed to those two listings were coming from ads. So at that point, it's like, okay, top line, everything looks great. Drilling down, maybe you need to focus on these two, because there's some kind of misalignment where despite how much you're spending on ads, you're not actually translating that into ranking, because if you were ranking higher, you would get more organic sales, i.e. you wouldn't be as reliant on ads.
Got it. So basically what you're looking at there, if I'm understanding correctly, is that if you see a heavy reliance on ads and you are trying to get the trophy for top of search or whatever, it's not really driving organic sales because you're still spending 60, 70+% on ads. So maybe in that case, you really should start focusing on profitability.
Yeah,
for that
could be
particular product.
The other thing is so that would be looking at like a snapshot, right? But because rankings oftentimes, like, you can pump the ads and get to top of search and get those sales relatively quickly. Driving up the organic rank is gonna take time. The more like competitive your space there is, the harder that's going to be, the longer that's going to take. So on those cases, what we would look for is, do we have a continuous improvement? And then at that point, you would also want to like track your rankings on the specific keywords you're getting aggressive with. Am I seeing marked improvement here? But then again, keeping a pulse on that just clues us into the fact like, hey, we're spending a lot on ads. Are we seeing the return? And for that particular account, I was going through and I was like, okay, so the two keywords that you're spending like 31% of total ad spend on, I mean, like a lot, they're actually not ranking within the top page. Maybe at this point, it makes sense to pivot towards other keywords that are maybe a little bit less expensive, that maybe you can move the needle on a little bit quicker, seeing as you've been doing this for a while and we're still seeing kind of that delta and you being reliant on ads.
Yeah, that's a good point, because again, this is becoming more and more of a pay-to-play platform. So we have to continually look at this a little differently than maybe we did a couple of years ago, or definitely more than we did 6 years ago, or whatever the case is. So speaking of things are constantly changing, you had mentioned earlier the legacy format, and there's a new format. And so we're recording this in June of 2022. When this comes out, the new format will probably be required. So can you just give us a quick little brief snapshot of what's different?
Yeah, definitely. So good news is if you are using bulk sheets and have not moved on to the new formatting, they had just it was a couple weeks back, extended the deadline to like force migration over to those. So I want to say that's like September now, where prior.
Oh, it did move. Okay, that's good.
Prior it was like, you got till January, like time's ticking, and now they'll give us a little bit longer. So that's good news. You have more time. But yes, the new format is great. There are some nuances that you have to be a little bit more aware of. I'm trying to put out more content on the YouTube channel on like those kind of quirks, because I feel like people moving from legacy format, there's a couple things related to the record ID columns and the operations column that might possibly trip you up. If you have like things you've done prior and like you're getting errors now, those are probably what's driving it. That being said, the updates and the options that we get with that, phenomenal. I'll happily take that trade-off. Biggest ones I'm excited about is sponsored display being in the new format, which is phenomenal. Like you can launch sponsored display ads. I still think bulk files are probably one of the best ways to launch campaigns at mass. There's other bulk file, like there's bulk campaign launchers and tools. I've seen some good ones. I still think you can, even through templates, I think it's much quicker to do it through bulk files, and you can actually create relatively easy. I mean, you can hire somebody off Fiverr as long as you know the format you need and you know the inputs you need. You can create some very cool campaign launchers for pennies on the dollar, honestly, that you could just continuously use with bulk files. So the fact that we can now carry that to sponsored display ads as well, like even if you wanted to create like audience, let's see, we can do category targeting. You can do off-platform audience targeting in sponsored display campaigns. So that's awesome. The fact that we can rename campaigns, like I don't feel like there's any really, again, good scalable way. Like if you just want to change one or two campaign names, that's fine. If you get into like an account that's a mess and you need to like add tagging structures to everything, oh my goodness, it's been insane. So the fact that you can go in, again, relatively easily, it's simply changing the name in one cell and then adding update in the operations column, and that's like it, and uploading it. Like it's, when I'd say simple, as long as you get, of course, get the format. It's very simple. The other thing that I'm stoked about is prior to the update, sponsored brands video product targeting. You couldn't update it. So you could see it in the download and you might be like, oh, I need to adjust this bid. And you would go and upload the file and you would get an error because you couldn't actually like adjust it through a bulk file. So you would at that point have to use some external, like maybe even do it manually if you didn't have some other sort of tool to use. So that was like, you could see it, you could read the data, you could know what you needed to do with it, but you couldn't actually like do anything with it. And now that got fixed, which I'm like, again, I think that's one of the other things I'm excited about too.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good data in it. And to your point, like you can use it for historical purposes, whether or not you even use these reports. It's probably one of the most powerful reports that they give us. So it's definitely worth checking out and learning the new format. It's something I'm working on for myself anyway, just because it is powerful, and you don't want to end up being like all of a sudden you get to when, even if they keep pushing the date back, eventually they get rid of the
eventually
old format.
They'll force us.
Right, exactly. So it's better to figure it out while you still have the option of switching back and forth to what you're comfortable with. Then all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's gone. So cool. Great. Exactly. So, all right. So for folks who wanted to learn more from you, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, if you want to just learn what I'm talking or see what I'm talking about, LinkedIn is where I put out the most content. You can go follow me there. As far as checking out what we do, or if you're interested in service and want us to audit your account, you can go to jungler.com, which is JUNGLR.com is the best place. There's a Calendly link at the bottom. You actually get to talk with me. So we'll go over your account, how we can help.
That's a really good domain, by the way.
Oh, thank you. My husband came up with it. See, business brain.
Well, no, it's good, and it's if my math serves me correctly, it's only 6 characters, which is got to be hard to find. Like that, yeah. And it fits with the theme of the Amazon jungle, so I love it. Yeah, awesome. So definitely recommend folks check you out on LinkedIn, as well as go to jungler.com. We'll have links to that in the show notes if you're listening to the audio version, and they'll be down below in the description if you're watching on YouTube. So this was a great conversation, Elizabeth, and I highly recommend folks go follow you and learn more, because you put out a lot of good stuff. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been really good. I've enjoyed it.